The realm. Do you know what the realm is? It's the 1,000 blades of Aegon's enemies. A story we agreed to tell each other over and over till we forget that it's a lie.
What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back for another Game of Thrones and A Song of Ice and Fire video. Alright my friends, I have another update from George R. R. Martin regarding the ending of his books. I think some of you will be very interested in what he had to say. I know I always am, even if it's not necessarily good news, although I think this is. Now, as you all know, A Song of Ice and Fire and even Game of Thrones still has millions of fans around the globe. If you follow any of the Facebook groups, then you would know these books and this show still gains new fans every single day. I know when I first discovered the show and watched its first episode, I immediately started wondering how this series would end. I'm sure a lot of you were the same way. I became so obsessed with this show, I started making hundreds and hundreds of videos where I would basically guess what I thought would happen during the final episodes. It was a lot of fun, and like most fans who made their own theories, I got some things wrong, but I also got some things right. When Season 8 finally released, we found out how the show ended. However, the final season of Game of Thrones was Dan and Dave's version of the events. Now, ever since Game of Thrones aired its final episode, millions of fans have been wondering if the books will end the same way. Well, the answer is yes and no, based on what George R. R. Martin has said. This is something that Dan and Dave and even George has discussed in interviews over the years. Nearly 8 years ago, when Dan and Dave sat down to do an interview with Vanity Fair, they said they went out to Santa Fe, New Mexico, where George R. R. Martin lives, and discussed his ending for the books. They were hoping George would give him his ending, that way they could start laying the groundwork for it in the earlier seasons. They wanted to know how everything ended so they could set things up. They said they sat down with George and literally went through each and every character. The only issue was, George was only able to give them some broad strokes, because even he didn't know all the details yet. Now, although many of us like to speculate, we still don't know what those broad strokes were. We don't know how much information George gave them. Some fans think all of the main characters will have the same ending, while others think they will be vastly different. We did, however, end up getting a confirmation about one of these characters, and that was Brandon Stark. After the show ended, this was revealed by the actor himself, Isaac Hempstead Wright. According to him, Dan and Dave said a few things involving Bran came directly from George R. R. Martin, and that was the Hodor revelation and that he would be king. Okay, so we now know Bran will be the king of something, but what about everyone else? Will Daenerys burn down King's Landing? Will Jon Snow ride off into the sunset beyond the Wall? Will Jaime and Cersei die beneath the Red Keep? Will Arya sail west of Westeros? What about all of the characters who were not in the final season? Will Stannis Baratheon actually die by Brienne's sword? Will Ramsay get devoured by his own dogs? Will Arya Stark kill the Night King? Will we even see a Night King in the books? Obviously, there are a lot of reasons why Game of Thrones and A Song of Ice and Fire will not have the same ending. I mean, sure, there will be some similarities, but at the end of the day, the stories are already vastly different. As you all know, Game of Thrones has killed characters that are still alive in the books. Not only that, but the books also have hundreds of more characters that Game of Thrones never introduced. That reason alone is why the endings will not be the same. It would be very hard for them to end the same when you consider Game of Thrones ended after only 8 seasons, when George has said there is more than enough material for 13 or 14 seasons.
Why is it ending?
I don't know. Ask Dave and Dan when they come through. We could have gone to 11, 12, 13 seasons, but I guess they wanted a life.
Now, let me show you what George said during an interview only a few days ago. I think this is very interesting. A Song of Ice and Fire author George R. R. Martin was back in Chicago earlier this week, getting an honorary doctorate from his alma mater, Northwestern University. While he was visiting, he gave an interview to a local station where he discussed his writing, his fame, and much more. Now, when they brought up Game of Thrones, George had this to say: "It won more Emmys than any other show in television history. I'm very happy to be associated with it. It also made me famous, which I have very mixed feelings about. I think it was Bill Murray who said, if you dream of fame and fortune, try just fortune first. There is something to say for that. Fame is definitely a double-edged sword. I've been writing stories about Westeros and the characters who live there, the Seven Kingdoms, since 1991. It's such a huge aspect of my life. It's transformed my life for good or for ill. It is where I am, and I do love Westeros. I love writing stories about it, so there's obviously a lot more stories to write. Alright, now this is where it gets good. He also said he thinks that House of the Dragon will most likely be out next spring, and the next long-awaited book in the series, The Winds of Winter. Fans have been waiting over a decade for that one, and Martin is as frustrated as they are. Looking back, I wish I'd stayed ahead of the books, he said. When they began Game of Thrones, I had 4 books already released, and the 5th one came out just as the series was starting. I had a 5-book head start, and these are massive books. I never thought they would catch up with me, but they did. They caught up with me and blew right by me. That made it a little strange because now the show was ahead of me and the show was moving in somewhat different directions. I'm still working on the book, but you'll see my ending when that comes out. I want you to focus on what he said right here at the end. He said the show was moving in somewhat different directions. I'm still working on the book, but you will see my ending when that comes out. Now, maybe this is wishful thinking, but I think that last sentence says a lot. It doesn't just sound like his ending will be somewhat different. I think it sounds like his ending will be very different based on a lot of the reasons I have already stated earlier in this video. Again, maybe this is only me, but it sounds like he said, HBO gave you their ending, but wait until you see my ending. I think if they were the same endings, he wouldn't have said my ending because that obviously separates his from the show's, but that's exactly what he wants to do. He wants his fans to know they will not be the same. Stannis Baratheon will not lose so easily to Ramsay. Sir Barristan Selmy will not die in some back alley. Arya Stark will not leap out of the sky to kill the Night King. Euron Greyjoy will not look and feel like something straight out of a Spencer's gift shop. Jon Snow will not sit on the sidelines during the biggest battle of his life. Dany's dragons will not die the same way they did in the show. The Faceless Men will not vanish from the story. Helen Reed will arrive before the end for a very good reason. Lady Stoneheart still has justice to serve. Now I could sit here and name things for the next hour, but I will not do that. If you have only seen the show, you might not agree with me. You might think Dan and Dave nailed their landing. However, if you have read the books, you know there is no way they could have the same endings. Now, with all of that being said, none of this means anything if George doesn't release the final books. As of right now, Game of Thrones is the only ending we have, and it will remain that way unless George does something about it. I think I can speak for a lot of the fans when I say, George, we need you to do something about it.